Now imagine a future where Africa speaks with one voice, politically, economically, and militarily. For decades, that dream seemed impossible, but right now, a quiet revolution is unfolding. African leaders are building new alliances that could reshape not just the continent, but the entire world order. For years, Africa's unity was nothing more than speeches and conferences. But today, something different is happening. From West Africa's pushback against foreign interference to East Africa's economic corridors, and the new BRICS expansion that now includes African nations like Egypt and Ethiopia, these are not small moves. They are signals that Africa is no longer content with being divided and dictated to. Colonial borders kept Africa fragmented. Western aid kept Africa dependent. Military bases kept Africa under surveillance. But now, leaders are realizing that survival and growth require unity. That's why we see new military pacts between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. We see continental initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, taking shape, the largest trade agreement in the world by population. And we see Africa demanding real seats at global decision-making tables, not just as observers, but as power brokers. But here's the uncomfortable truth. A united Africa is not what the West wants. Why? Because division means control. A fragmented Africa is easier to exploit for resources, markets, and influence. But the more Africa unites, the harder it becomes for outsiders to dictate terms. That's why every step toward sovereignty faces resistance, from economic sanctions to political pressure to media narratives painting African leaders as threats instead of visionaries. So let me make this explicitly clear. A united Africa is an existential threat to Western powers. Now let's pull back the curtain and expose some hard truths. Every move Africa makes toward unity sets off alarm bells in Western capitals. It challenges the very foundations of their power. First, let's talk economics. The West has long profited from keeping Africa fragmented. It's easier to control a divided market than a united one. With 54 countries speaking hundreds of languages, Africa looked like a continent ripe for the picking. Each nation could be individually wooed, manipulated, and exploited for resources or cheap labor. But now with the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, the narrative is changing. By removing trade barriers across the continent, Africa is creating its own economic powerhouse, one that can negotiate as one big bloc on the world stage. That shift in power dynamics threatens Western interests. Uniting makes it harder for outsiders to strike individual deals and maintain their dominance. And let's not forget about China. Their investments and partnerships across Africa have been a game changer. From infrastructure projects to manufacturing hubs, China has shown a willingness to invest in Africa's growth. But most importantly, they respect Africa's desire for unity. In fact, China supports initiatives like the AfCFTA, recognizing the economic benefits for all involved. That's a stark contrast to the West, which often uses aid as a tool to control. Let's take a closer look at how Western aid has been anything but a helping hand. For decades, Western nations have dangled development aid in front of African countries. But let's be clear, aid isn't charity. It comes with strings attached, policies that benefit Western interests, not always the recipient. Many African countries have found themselves locked into cycles of dependency, forever reliant on that aid to function. It stifles growth, keeps economies weak, and ensures that Western nations maintain a hold over African politics. You may have heard of the infamous African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. It sounds like a generous offer, right? Duty-free access for certain goods. But beneath the surface lies a different story. AGOA limits the scope of what can be traded, favoring Western markets and excluding many crucial sectors. It's a carefully crafted deal that helps American and European businesses while doing little to support genuine African industrialization. Then there's the issue of military bases. As of today, 99% of the world's military bases outside of national borders belong to whom? You guessed it, the West. They have a massive network of listening posts, drone bases, and military installations all over Africa. These bases serve as eyes and ears on the ground, allowing Western nations to monitor and influence activities across the continent. They can spy on allies and adversaries, intervene in conflicts, and project military power whenever they choose. It's a legacy of the Cold War that continues to cast a long shadow over Africa. But Africa is waking up and taking steps to secure its own future. Countries are rethinking hosting Western bases and demanding more transparency and respect in their partnerships. It's a crucial step toward asserting African agency and charting their own destiny. Now let's switch gears and talk about the elephant in the room: Western military interventions. From Libya to Mali to the Central African Republic, we've seen firsthand how these interventions destabilize nations, prolong conflicts, and leave lasting scars on societies. They violate international law, ignore African sovereignty, and often lead to humanitarian crises. It's a stark abuse of power that fuels instability and extremism across the region. The root cause: the West's insatiable thirst for resources. Africa is rich in minerals, oil, and strategic materials vital for global supply chains, and the West is eager to exploit that wealth. When African governments assert their right to manage those resources, the West responds with regime change operations, coups, and sanctions. They prop up puppet regimes, fund rebel groups, and interfere in elections to ensure favorable outcomes. The Democratic Republic of Congo is a tragic example of this manipulation. Despite having vast mineral wealth, the DRC remains one of the world's poorest countries, and you can guess why. The West has a vested interest in keeping it that way. As the saying goes, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. Similarly, the West has convinced Africans that they don't exist as a united force to be reckoned with. Decades of propaganda have normalized the idea that Africans are divided by tribe, religion, or politics. This has led to a sense of complacency, making it easier for Western powers to manipulate individual countries. It's a strategy that has worked for far too long, but it's losing steam. African youth, the majority of whom have never known life outside of independence, are rejecting this narrative. They see through the divisive tactics and are demanding a better future. The recent coups in Mali and Guinea may appear as isolated incidents, but they are part of a larger movement towards Pan-Africanism. These young leaders are charting a new course, prioritizing continental unity and self-reliance. Insecurity and extremism thrive when countries are divided and dependent. But a united Africa is a stable Africa. Imagine a continent working together to tackle shared challenges. That would be a game changer in the fight against global terrorism and organized crime. Today, African countries are standing up for their rights and refusing to be pawns in someone else's game. They're asserting their identity as strong, capable, and united. Just look at the recent BRICS summit. The addition of African nations like Egypt and Ethiopia sends a powerful message. It's not just about economic ties, it's about unity. It reflects a growing desire among African countries to align themselves with nations that respect their sovereignty and support their aspirations for growth. To truly embrace Pan-Africanism, we need to challenge the status quo on multiple fronts. First and foremost, it means shifting away from a reliance on Western aid and forging new partnerships with nations that share our values and priorities. At the same time, promoting intra-African trade and investment is crucial. Supporting each other's industrialization and championing initiatives like the AfCFTA will help build a strong, resilient African economy that is less vulnerable to external pressures. It's also about reimagining our educational systems. Teaching history from an African perspective allows us to celebrate our achievements, learn from our past, and appreciate our cultural richness. Empowering the next generation with this knowledge is essential to fostering pride and unity. But perhaps most importantly, embracing Pan-Africanism means uniting across borders, across ethnicities, and across religions. It's about building solidarity among our youth, our women, and our civil society. When we stand together, we become a powerful force that cannot be ignored. Remember, the path to liberation is rarely easy. There will be obstacles, setbacks, and those who seek to divide us. But the spirit of Pan-Africanism gives us the strength to keep moving forward. It's a call to action for every African, for every friend of Africa. So my brothers and sisters, Africa's future is in our hands. What do you think? Is this new era of Pan-African unity the real path forward, or just another false promise? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this video, and let's keep exposing the truth. If you agree with this message, then write in the comments, "Africa unite," and shine your eye. Please like, share, and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.